I'm Dan McVaugh, and this is Connectivity Evolution. And today we're going to explore the question: is 5G living in the shadows of 4G's success? 4G was unquestionably one of the wireless telecommunication industry's biggest advances and success stories, especially from the standpoint of consumers. It started all back with the inception and the invention of the smartphone. While the smartphone's inception was often incorrectly accredited to Apple and Steve Jobs, it definitely set the bar for the amazingly compact compute powerhouse full of apps and features that consumers had ever seen. The most impactful capabilities came in the smartphone because of the increasing availability of processing power, large screens, and large storage. Those features enabled a plethora of mind-blowing capabilities for users: web browsing, audio and video streaming, things like iTunes and Spotify, social media apps like Facebook and Instagram, location-based apps like Google Maps and Waze, and even enhanced communication capabilities in things like FaceTime and SMS. But the very release of the smartphone actually predated 4G. All of these amazing features that consumers were hoping for quickly caused the networks to come to its knees. Lots of lagging response, spinning beach balls, and buffering. When the iPhone was first released, it was exclusively available across AT&T's network, and it quickly brought AT&T's network to its knees. That set the stage for 4G to be the superstar. 4G brought massive improvements in throughput and responsiveness. Users quickly experienced speeds nearly as good as their home broadband connections and quickly soaked up the massive amounts of network throughput usage. All of the smartphone's capabilities blossomed, most significant of which was streaming audio and video. Apps like YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram became massive sources of digital media distribution. Content creators became overnight millionaires. Hundreds of millions of smartphones became live digital streaming platforms, not just changing the way we consume music and videos, but also spurring on social movements. Perpetrators of crimes, citizens acting against social norms, and bad cops were all recorded and spread for all to witness. The confluence of smartphones and 4G are what made 4G a legendary success. So what could 5G have possibly delivered that could have matched such revolutionary impacts as 4G? 5G was doomed to be a letdown, and of course, many view it as such. But I'm here to share with you all the great things that 5G has introduced that you may not realize. While very few carry the disruptive, innovative impacts that came with 4G, there are a few notable impacts that came so far from 5G. The most notable impact to consumers would be that of fixed wireless access. That's the use of the cellular network to bring broadband to homes and businesses via wireless distribution. And 5G brought that not just in the technology, but also in the introduction of new spectrum. The combination of new spectrum that was released by the FCC and the capabilities of 5G allowed companies like T-Mobile and Verizon especially, as well as AT&T, to provide broadband internet access to residents and businesses using their cell sites as distribution points for fixed wireless access. This gave consumers a second or third or maybe even fourth option when deciding where to buy internet broadband. In 2003, for example, T-Mobile had about 3.2 million subs. Verizon had about 1.8 million subs. And to boot, T-Mobile is actually offering that service as low as $35 a month. Very, very disruptive to the industry. If you advance forward to last year, 2004, Verizon had over 4 million subs, and they're forecasting to have upwards of 8 or 9 million by 2028. But that's not all that 5G brought. That's what consumers probably have observed the most, but it brought a lot of other capabilities. The bulk of other impactful 5G features that are less noticeable to consumers but still significant are an improvement in latency. Latency is how responsive the network is. How quickly can the network respond to something the user needs? This has advanced and made things like streaming gaming more available for mobile consumers. They've brought is capabilities to the carriers to keep up with our insatiable demand for data as consumers. It's brought things like carrier aggregation. This allows a network operator to take different chunks of spectrum that are disparate from each other and combine them. It's sort of like having 4 or 5 different smaller plumbing pipes and mashing them together and making them into one large pipe. These are the types of features that 5G has brought to carriers that has allowed them to keep up and give us the types of services we've grown used to from the advent of 4G. In total, the biggest impact that it's having for carriers is it's driving down the cost of these networks while it's still increasing their capabilities. The problem that carriers have had for years, going back since the inception of cellular, is that the price that we pay as consumers for our service has been going down over time, while our usage and the capabilities of the networks has had to expand exponentially. An example is if we look at the consumer price indexes for standard consumer goods over the last 23 to 24 years. When we look at the consumer price index since 2000, going through 2023, on average, all of the things that consumers in the United States spend has had an inflation of roughly 74%. And many of the things that we have to spend money on have far exceeded that. No surprise, things like hospital services, college tuition and textbooks, nursery school, things of those nature have far exceeded the standard cost of living increases that inflation have brought. But there's many consumer goods that have fallen well below that inflation level to a level that effectively is a decrease in cost. And chief among those is cellular phone service. When you look at cellular phone service since 2000, the price that we pay as consumers for the service we get is effectively 40% less expensive than it was 23, 24 years ago. And many don't understand that. So these price pressures have been a huge issue for carriers. They have to keep up with all of the features, all of the capabilities, all of the insatiable demand for data that we have as consumers, while charging us less and less year over year. Of course, reducing their revenues per user, making it more price pressure on them to operate these networks. If we also look on top of that, how insatiable we are as consumers and our data usage, it becomes clear that something has to be changed, and that something has been 5G. It has brought the carriers the possibility of keeping up at a much less cost to their networks. If we look at consumer usage in the United States, going back to 2010, in 2010, in total, we used about a little under 1 trillion megabytes of data for data usage on cellular networks. Fast forward to 2022, we went up to 100 trillion megabytes of data on these cellular networks. That's a 25,000% growth. It's exponential. How in the heck could carriers ever keep up with this insatiable data demand while also effectively reducing what we pay for their service year over year? It's a wonder that these carriers are even still in business. And so it's understandable now that when we look at what we experienced as consumers with 4G compared to what we've experienced with 5G, that of course we see 5G as a failure, but it really isn't. It's just that the impacts that 5G have had are not evident to us as consumers. It's all behind the curtain, and it's all what's keeping these networks keeping up with our demands, our needs, and the explosion of apps and capabilities that have come with phones becoming an essential part of our lives. They weren't really that way 13, 14, 20 years ago, but they have become today. So hopefully this helps you understand where 5G stands. There's still a lot to happen with 5G, so stay tuned. I'll talk more about what 5G has done for us in later episodes, as well as what to expect with 6G. For now, this is Dan, Connectivity Evolution. Till next time, thanks for joining.
Thanks for tuning in to Connectivity Evolution, the podcast that explores how technology enables human connections. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to hit that follow button and be sure to share with your friends and family.